All right, so my name is John, and I'm going to provide you with a super light introduction to cryptography, and we'll sort of go on a hunt for it on the internet, and we'll try to figure out where it lives in our apps and where we should encounter it when we're developing apps and stuff like that. We'll look for it in our development environments, our tools, and the infrastructure that we use, and we'll see how easy it is to use it in certain contexts, and where we shouldn't be doing it ourselves, and we should be letting other people do it for us that have the expertise in it. And feel free to post questions in the workshop chat if you have any questions throughout the talk. And you can also, I don't know if can I unmute you guys, or you guys can unmute yourselves or something? Not really sure. Steven, how does the unmuting work?
They should unmute themselves.
Okay, cool. All right. So if you have a question and I didn't see it in the chat or whatever, feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt me. I'll if it's pertinent, I'll respond. If it's not pertinent whatsoever, then I'll let you know and we'll continue. And maybe I'll answer it later after the workshop, or I'll answer it in the chat if you post it in the chat. So let's move on. Let's start with the presentation and the workshop. So I'm John, as I said. I didn't learn any of what you're about to hear in school because they don't teach it to you, unfortunately, in undergrad in most universities. I'm a software engineering student at Concordia right now. I'm doing the avionics and embedded systems track, I guess you could call it. I'm interested in robotics and whatnot, but mainly I'm most interested in information security and cryptography and whatnot. So my internships and my work, where I work part-time throughout the year and full-time during the summer, is at Genetech. I'm an information security specialist. Specifically, I'm an analyst. I'm an analyst and developer in the identity management and cloud security team. So we develop solutions for cloud security and identity management and cryptography, where the rest of and we support the rest of the company to make sure that they're able to do things securely and safe, and they know that people logging in somewhere are who they say they are. So at first I worked in the security operations center, where I did some threat hunting and analysis, and I tried to make sure that there were no threats to the company. And I made sure that if there was a threat, that we would try to neutralize it as quickly as possible. I would do some hacking, as you would say, like red teaming, meaning I would try to break into different areas of the company, and we would see what we would discover and that kind of thing. It would be a game between me and the rest of the security team. And then I sort of moved on to a governance, risk, and compliance role, where I worked on developing a survey, which I'm going to show you later in the talk. Something similar, yeah, exactly, something similar to a white hat hacker, exactly. That's exactly what it was. That was my first position. So then the government risk and compliance position was developing a survey for software that we wanted to acquire in order to use in the company. So, like, for example, if the human resources department needed some software for developing a way to hire students from university, then they would maybe go out and look for some software that they liked using, and they would send us an email saying, we want to use the software for making this program for our students. And then we'll be like, okay, well, let us send them a survey to see what their security is like. And then if their security is good enough, then you can use them, because we don't want to be using software that's insecure or more insecure than the software we produce, because we don't want to put our clients at risk. So that's sort of the second one was. And then what I'm doing right now is the cloud security and identity, which is mostly applied cryptography. And we'll get into all that, and figuring out how to make sure software in the cloud is secure, and where keys should be stored and whatnot. So what really is cryptography? Do you mean Bitcoin? No, it's not Bitcoin. Some people forget about cryptography, and they just think it's cryptocurrency because it's such a big thing now. Cryptocurrency uses some cryptographic methods and applies them in a way that helps us ensure transactions are being worked out properly throughout the world. And blockchain is a completely different subject from what we're going to be talking about today. And it deserves like a whole 6 workshops on its own. It's very complicated, and I mean, it's not too complicated to get into, but it's complicated once you're in it, and there's lots of stuff to learn about. So yeah, I was gonna give an anecdote about somebody who confused Bitcoin and cryptography, but it's okay. I'll skip that because I think that was a good enough explanation. Now I'll go on to the sort of definition of what cryptography really is. So this is what you find on the internet. I think it's difficult to understand what it really is from these definitions. Like, what does it mean? The art of writing and solving codes. What's a code? I don't know. Is it like Python? Is Python code? Is a code like a secret language? I don't know. These are just weird definitions that you find in is it kind of outdated? First one. Yeah, a bit outdated. I mean, it's still an art, but not so much anymore. It's more of a science now because, sorry, if you guys are missing what the questions are in the chat, just make sure you're watching the chat as you're watching my my screen, because I'll just jump to questions in the chat as I'm talking, and you might miss or not understand what I'm saying. So, for example, the question was just now, isn't that first one kind of outdated? The first one was the art of writing or solving codes. Yeah, it's kind of outdated because it's more of a science now. Nowadays, we can prove if a cryptographic algorithm or method is secure or not with solid math, and it's definitely not so much an art anymore as it is a science, because we use the scientific method to make sure that certain cryptographic algorithms are secure and how long they'll be secure for. So secret writing, the science of study of the techniques of secret writing, especially code, cipher systems, methods, and the like. It's also like a sort of a wishy-washy definition. It's hard to tell what it really means. I prefer explaining that cryptography secures information, and that it does it in 2 ways. It hides things and it proves things. So what does that really mean? It provides a confidentiality, so things that we don't want necessarily exposed to the world or we want to keep secret. It helps us keep things secret, and then it also provides integrity to data that is being transmitted over the internet or is being made public. So for example, when you go to a website, you want to make sure that that website is actually being served by the server that you're expecting it to come from, right? You don't want the Google website to be coming from some website, from some server in, I don't know, Zimbabwe, because you want it to go to the American Google, you want it to go to google.ca, right? So you need to make sure that it's the real company that's giving you the website. So it's able to do those 2 things. It makes sure that business secrets are secure. It makes sure personal information doesn't get leaked. It allows you to send transactions securely without people knowing, and it allows you to send and receive sensitive messages. Authentication is part of what integrity provides. Non-repudiation is sort of a complicated subject, just because you don't hear the word so much, but it means that the sender of the data is provided with proof of delivery, and the recipient is provided with the proof of the sender's identity, so that neither party can deny sending or receiving or accessing the data. That's the idea. And then proof of transactions is actually used a lot in blockchain. So if you have, you can make certain things public that you would want to be public, so that nobody can dispute what actually happened. So how did it all start? It actually went back to ancient Greece. Even before that, actually, it started in ancient Egypt. Really, cryptography is centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries old, and that's because ever since the beginning of mankind, at least once we started learning to write, we wanted to make things secret because we were worried about blockchain is related to cryptocurrency. Yeah, for sure. I was just saying that proof of transactions. The cryptocurrency uses blockchain, and blockchain is an invention or a discovery that uses certain cryptographic methods in order to prove transactions and keep track of them. So that's sort of a topic on itself, and I said that would take like 6 workshops to get through. So that was probably the last time you'd hear me talk about blockchain. How did it all start? Again, it goes back to ancient Greece, where I think the best sort of starting point is. And this gives us the ability to see how it evolved and where humans really started with trying to keep secrets from each other. So there's throughout human history there have been plenty of attempts at hiding information, and almost all the attempts have been unsuccessful until very recently, and we're still being unsuccessful in certain things, but mostly we're doing pretty well right now. So back in ancient Greece, there was something called the cytale, or the cytale, or the scytale. It depends how you pronounce it. Everybody says it differently because we don't actually know how it's pronounced here in the Western world. If any of you are Greek, then you can let me know. But would you guys have any guesses of how this thing is used? You can unmute yourself, say something. You could type it in the chat. Are there any guesses? We've got Doge Dude typing. The way it's wrapped around is the code. G equals A. U equals B. No. Yeah, it's close, but no. It's a transposition cipher, which should give you a hint. Meaning that it's the letters are transposed. So all the letters you need to decrypt the message are there, but they're just not in the right order. So it's actually not the best representation of this picture. This is a real picture of one, but the way it's used is you take one of these dowels and you write oh, can you see my pointer, laser pointer? There we go. Yeah, here. So see over here, G. This if you write something along this way, you can write however many lines you want, however big the circumference of the dowel is. And so I don't know what language this is, but you can write a message across this way. And for example, you might have like if I'm going to encrypt Jonathan, you might write JONATHAN, and then you would write another word on the next line, another word, whatever, and keep writing. And then when you unwrap it, the letters are all scrambled because it's the first letter from the first line, first letter from the second line, and keeps going, and it's not legible when you unwrap it because the letters aren't in order, hence the transposition cipher. But if you have the right size dowel and you wrap it around, all of a sudden you get the messages laid out in these lines. Now the trick is if you write things small enough and you have a different size dowel, and you try to wrap it around, you'll get the wrong messages across because it won't line up. And so this was sort of the Julius Caesar. Yeah, so this was Greek. The next one is Romans, I promise. So this is called the cytale, and then I'd say it's the first sort of introduction to cryptography that we've seen in human civilization. So this was used by Greek army generals to communicate because they didn't want people intercepting their messages, they basically didn't want. They were able to send these pieces of parchment with their messengers, and they didn't want their messengers reading the message either, obviously. And then their other army general, would have a dowel the same size they have, and they would wrap it back up and read the message. That's the idea. Why is it insecure? It's insecure because it's very easy to just try with yourself to try to align the letters, and all of a sudden you'll get a word if you know the language. So there aren't really that many options in the size of dowel because you only have so many lines, right? So if, for example, you wrote it on a dowel that is I don't know, like 6 inches in diameter, something really large, and then you sent it along and then somebody intercepted the message, they could probably just make a whole bunch of dowels and try putting the thing on, and they'd be able to decrypt the message pretty quick. Or they don't even need to use a dowel; they could really just like position it with their hands. So that's what that's about. Let's move on to the next one. The Caesar cipher is the Romans. Julius Caesar had this developed. It's a substitution cipher. So the idea is you have. I'm not going to ask you each one, but basically the Caesar cipher is you have an alphabet, and you can use any of the letters from the alphabet, and you'll want to basically use a different letter for each letter of the alphabet. So all you do is you take you create a cipher alphabet by shifting all the letters over, so that an A becomes a D, a B becomes an E, C becomes an F, and so on. And then you loop back around. And so Z becomes a C, Y becomes a B, X becomes an A. And the idea is that all the letters can be shifted. The classic one was by 3, but you could shift it by any number of letters. And that way, if you decide to write a message, instead of writing B, you'll write D, and then it'll sort of be illegible because the ciphertext, so the encrypted text, is using this shifted alphabet. Why is it insecure? Because there's only 26 possible shifts that you can make. If that doesn't make sense, hit F in the chat or something. So basically, the idea is you want to get the ciphertext to be shifted to the right point, and then you'll be able to read you want to move the cipher alphabet to the right shift, and then you'll be able to read the original text. So there's two things two kinds of, there's plain text and there's ciphertext. The ciphertext is the encrypted version of the plain text. So if you ever hear me use the words plain text or ciphertext, that's what they mean. Okay. So why is it insecure? Yeah, because there's only 26 shifts you can do for the cipher alphabet. So what are these ciphers doing wrong? Do you guys have any guesses? Like, why are these ciphers so insecure? Yeah, low effort to break, but why are they so easy to break? So yeah, one of them was physical. One of them is easy to manipulate with your hands, but then again, the what's it called? The Enigma machine in World War II was physical, but it was very, very difficult to break. They did eventually, and we'll get to that, but it was breakable. So physical, good. Physical, very limited options of encoding. That's a very good idea. So the security of, we'll move to the next slide. So the security of ciphers should depend only on the cipher key and not the algorithm. That's Kirchhoff's principle. So it's all about the keys. So if you have a really long key, it should be very difficult to decipher the ciphertext, because the key. Well, it's not really about the length of the keys. It's more, nowadays it is, but before it was about basically the possibilities of what the key could be. So the idea is that the more complicated a key is, or the more options you can have for the key, the more difficult it is to break the cipher, right? So the Caesar cipher only had 26 possible encodings, right? So you could try all of them in, I don't know, an hour by hand or in seconds with a computer, and you'll have cracked whatever message it was. And the idea is that also with what's it called, with the Caesar cipher, and also with the Citale, if you know the algorithm that they use to encrypt, meaning they use a wooden dowel to wrap the strap around, or that you just need to shift the cipher alphabet a bit, then it becomes very easy to decrypt the message, right? And so it should depend So like secrecy should really only depend on the secrecy of the cipher key, so that as long as the key is secure, you should be good to go, right? Nobody should be able to see what the ciphertext can be decrypted to. So yeah, okay, good. So you got to ask yourself, what exactly is the key in each situation? Like, for example, the Caesar cipher, the key is really the number that you use to shift the cipher alphabet by, right? It could be anywhere from 1 to 26. That means there's only 26 possible keys, and that's super easy to guess. Whereas with the Cytail, sorry, did I say Cytail? I meant Caesar cipher first. The Cytail, you have the wooden dowel, and you can increase the size sort of arbitrarily, and there's infinite number of sizes. But realistically, you can only write your letters so small, right? So you can only have so many lines of letters, and so no matter what, you're going to be able to sort of align the strap in a way such that you can read the text pretty easily. So they both depended on the secrecy of the algorithm and not so much the secrecy of the key. Yeah. Now, sort of in the meantime, since ancient Greece and since the Romans, there have been some really, really interesting events that happened because of cryptography in the world. In 1587, Mary, Queen of Scots, was assassinated because her cryptography, her cipher that she was using to discuss her plot to kill Queen Elizabeth, was broken. So she was using a monoalphabetic cipher, meaning you have one alphabet that you just substitute into the other alphabet. So much like the Caesar cipher, even though it's not shifting the same alphabet, it could be any other alphabet. Like, for example, if you just made up a different letter, a different character for each letter. So like A could be like a squiggly line. Do I have like a, yeah, so if like A was, I don't know, like a squiggly line, and then B was a square, and so on, right? You would be able to decipher this with common patterns. So what it was called was a frequency analysis. And so using frequency analysis, meaning, okay, E is the most common letter in the English alphabet used. So if you look at, I don't know, like a newspaper, you count the number of E's, you'll have a certain amount, and then A's, you have a certain amount. And so if you look at that frequency, you can tell sort of which character is which letter. And so frequency analysis has been understood for a couple of years, or a couple hundreds of years before 1587, and it was her use of an insecure cipher that got her assassinated. So you can see how important cryptography was even back in Elizabethan Europe. So the next sort of major event that I found was interesting was Russia losing the Crimean War. That was due to the Charles Babbage's cracking of the Vigenère cipher. So the Vigenère cipher was said to have been the uncrackable cipher, le chiffre indéchiffrable or whatever. It's like basically the uncrackable code. It was really they thought it was really like uncrackable and nobody would ever figure out how to crack it. The Vigenère cipher, instead of having just one alphabet, it was multiple alphabets. So you would cycle through different alphabets in order to figure out what you're supposed to encrypt it with. So, for example, if you have if you have A as if you have this shift, which is 3 for one alphabet, so you'll have you'd have a table of these alphabets lines up like this, for example, and you'd have a shift of 3, shift of 2, shift of 1, shift of 4, shift of 5, and so on until you get to 26. And the idea is that you would come up with some code, like, I don't know, let's say the code is cat. So we would say, okay, C is the third letter in the alphabet, A is the first, and I don't know what T is, but it would be somewhere down here. And the idea is that you would say, okay, now we're going to rotate between these alphabets, and we're going to say the first letter of the text will be encrypted with the first alphabet, the second will be with the third, and then with whatever that is, whatever T is, the teeth alphabet or whatever. And so each of these would be shifted by a different letter. And the reason this was so hard to break was because letters in the plain text could be encrypted by any number of other letters, right? So there's not necessarily a direct correspondence between one letter in the cipher alphabet and the one letter in the plain text alphabet. And so being able to switch between these cipher alphabets gave it the advantage of being very secure. Now, unfortunately, for Russia, Charles Babbage was very smart, and he figured out how to crack it using, again, frequency analysis, but it was a bit more complicated, and I'm going to give you some links about how you could try to crack it yourself and see how it was done at the end of the talk. So that was a major event. And then sort of moving on to the World War era, the United States actually joined the Allies. Originally, they were impartial, and they decided they were going to be neutral. They weren't going to sort of involve themselves in this petty duality between the Germans and the rest of the world. And so they decided to stay neutral. But then all of a sudden, there was one telegram that was encrypted and was being sent to Mexico to sort of keep the U.S. occupied by something that Mexico was doing. And the idea was that if this telegram was decrypted by the UK, they would be able to convince the US to join them in the Allies in the fight against the other side, right? So this telegram, called the Zimmerman telegram, you can look it up after, could convince the U.S. to join the war and abandon their neutral peacekeeper mindset. And then the last thing was the Enigma machine, which was made by the Germans, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen the movie. The idea is that the Germans encrypted all their communications with the Enigma machine, and they would send out new keys every month or so to plug into the Enigma machine to make sure that the keys kept changing. But eventually, the Enigma machine was also cracked, and the end of World War II sort of came about as soon as it did, mostly because of the cracking of this cipher. There was a huge effort from Britain's side, UK, and also the States in cracking the Enigma cipher. And it was, you can read all about it on the internet. I'd also highly suggest the movie on it. And that's that. So now the question is, what made all these different events happen, and what was common among all these events, and how could this have been fixed? Now, realistically, the ciphers themselves weren't great, but a major problem was the distribution of keys, because keys needed to be distributed for all these ciphers to work. For example, even though the keys for the Enigma machine were distributed every month or whatever, and they changed every 2 weeks at the end of the war, it was really a big feat to distribute these keys to the entire army, right? And if any of the keys were intercepted, you'd be able to read the messages. So it used to be sort of when cryptography started becoming more apparent to the commercial society in the U.S. the big businesses actually had trusted humans flying all over the world with USB keys that had the keys to encrypt and decrypt messages on them. And it was really quite something to read about, because it's crazy that you would think that actual physical people had to go and distribute cryptographic keys to places in Europe, for example, just to make sure that communications were secure over the internet. Yeah, because they didn't have a good way to distribute keys. They were only able to encrypt and decrypt locally on a machine. They had no way of sharing keys securely. So later, Diffie-Hellman, the Diffie-Hellman key exchange was created by Dr. Diffie and Dr. Hellman. They were able to, they found a way for two parties to agree on an encryption key over an insecure channel. So like, for example, if Alice and Bob wanted to figure out a key, decide on some key or some password to encrypt data with, and that they could share, so that they could share encrypted data. They needed to decide on a key to use in the first place, but let's say they didn't want to actually have to meet in person to decide on the key, right? Let's say they were I don't know, far away, and they wanted to email each other, but they couldn't. They didn't have a way to decide on a key long distance, right? The phone wires could be tapped, the emails could be intercepted, all that kind of stuff. So what the Diffie-Hellman key exchange is they sort of it allows you to each choose your own sort of random numbers, and then perform some operations across the wire without exposing the numbers you chose, or the eventual key that you'll be creating. There's plenty of great videos on the internet explaining it. I'm not going to go into it now because it doesn't matter for what we're going to talk about after. But I'll have, again, links at the end of the presentation for you to go learn about this stuff. It's pretty cool. So finally, what we have today, which is the gold standard for cryptography, is public key cryptography. The idea is that every person who wants to use it creates a public key and a private key, which are mathematically linked, so that the public key they can share to the world, and anybody can encrypt data with that public key. But then the only person who can decrypt the data is you, because you have the private key. And the idea is that as long as you keep the private key secure, all the data encrypted by the public key will be secure, and only you'll be able to read it. Now, it also works the other way around, where you can sign data with your private key and other people can verify it, but we'll look at that after. So where are we now? The sort of quintessential characters that we use to explain crypto are Alice, Bob, and Eve. Alice and Bob, I presume, are just called Alice and Bob because of the A and the B, just because A wants to send a message to B, it's easy to say. Eve, I think, is because it is short for eavesdropping, but I'm not completely sure. But anyways, these are usually the characters that we use to describe cryptographic algorithms. So just to recap, Alice is usually trying to send something to Bob, or Bob is trying to send something to Alice, and Eve is the one trying to intercept the messages. So we're going to look at where we are now in terms of cryptography. So public key cryptography, I just explained, gives you the ability to sign and verify a signature and encrypt and decrypt data. The concept of public key infrastructure is something that's important in organizations, so that you have like certificate authorities where they can issue certificates, which would be public keys, that are trusted by the rest of the organization. And we'll see how that works in TLS and SSL later, which is how you ensure that the websites you're going to are actually who they say they are. And then we also, how does this help with right? So the idea is that this allows you to have a public aspect that other people can see, and it's vetted by the entire community. I'm going to show you also a tool called Key Store Explorer, where you can play with public key cryptography and whatnot. So RSA is one of the main algorithms that's used widely. It's used in in almost all aspects of public key cryptography. The only reason it's called RSA is because the people who created it are Ron Rivest, Adi Shamir, and Leonard Edelman, so RSA. That's really the only reason, so don't get confused. Don't think it stands for something other than who they are. It's based on prime factorization, so basically this is the security of the algorithm depends on how hard it is to factorize a large prime number. Right now it's very difficult, but we'll see how it might become easier if you have a quantum computer, because there is something called Shor's algorithm that allows you to factor very large prime numbers very quickly. So RSA might not be secure in, I don't know, like 20 years, but for now it's pretty good. It's very, very good. Elliptic curve cryptography is sort of an alternative to RSA. It's also not super resistant to quantum computers, but right now it is also quite good. It's based on the algebraic structure of elliptic curves. I'm not going to get into the theory behind it because it's not sort of in the scope of this talk. Just to let you know that these two things exist and they're used in the wild. So that's public key cryptography, where there's like I said, a public key and a private key, where anybody can encrypt something with your public key, and then you'll be the only one who can read it. And then the sort of more understandable and more sort of archetypal version of cryptography is symmetric key cryptography, where there's one key and you encrypt and decrypt data with that key, just sort of like a key you put it into a lock. You have that one key, right? And you put that key in the lock, you turn the lock, it opens, and then you can use the same key to, I guess you don't really use the key to lock it, but you get the idea. I guess you do if it's like a door, you know, you could turn it right or turn it left. But yeah, so that's the idea for symmetric key cryptography. There's something called block ciphers, which encrypt blocks of code, blocks of plain text at a time. And stream ciphers basically encrypt 1 bit at a time, and you can use it for streaming communication. Like, for example, stream ciphers like Snow are going to be used in the 5G networks that are coming out, which is pretty cool. So it's a pretty good stream cipher. And then AES is the de facto standard for encrypting data on hard drives and large data sets and whatnot. And the reason why we still use a symmetric key cryptography as opposed to just making everything public key cryptography, because it does sound great, right? Public key cryptography. But the issue is that it's very slow to encrypt and decrypt things with public key cryptography, especially if you increase the key size. Like, for example, right now, a lot of organizations are trying to increase the key size to 4,096 bits, because instead of the standard 2024 bits, because 2048 bits, because the 4,096 bit keys will be more quantum resistant than the 2048 bit keys. So they're sort of looking forward and saying, okay, well, when quantum computers do come around, we should probably have all of our communications now be encrypted in a way that they're at least slightly resistant to quantum computers. So we have a bit of time, to figure things out. But symmetric key cryptography is actually almost all of the ciphers being used now are quantum resistant. And they're a lot faster. And so we still use symmetric key cryptography for plenty of things like encrypting hard drives and encrypting data in transit, because otherwise it would just be too slow and it would take forever to load a website securely. So now we're going to go on a hunt for where we might find cryptography in the wild. This is going to be more interactive. I'm going to post some sort of a technology that uses cryptography in the chat and on the screen, and you're going to have a certain amount of time to go find it on the actual internet and in the wild, where it's being used. Go to your favorite websites to try to find where they might be using it, and you guys can post then screenshots in the chat to see if we understand what this is. And once you find some things, then I'll explain what cryptography there is behind it, and we'll talk about each kind of applied crypto. So the game is simple. Even if you don't find anything. Right. So even if you don't find anything, at least you've explored the web a bit more. And after each hunt, of course, I'll show you examples of that kind of tech where I use it personally, and also where I use it in at work. And I'll explain how cryptography plays a role in each of these technologies. So let's begin the game. The first technology is TLS or SSL. Usually you'll find it as HTTPS. So you guys can start now. You have 60 seconds. Good, get me a screenshot. Get me a screenshot. So even if you don't know what this is, just type it into Google. Maybe you'll see something, and then try to figure out where you would find that on your favorite web page, or just on any web page. And take a screenshot and put it in the chat. Nice, good. Yeah. Okay, 30 more seconds in case you guys want to add anything else. $15 seconds. Is there anything else you guys know about SSL or TLS? Four, three, two, one. Okay, all right. I will show you guys what it looks like in the wild. So I'm going to minimize this and bring up a Chrome tab. Sorry, I don't know why that keeps going to the next slide. There we go. Okay. So when you go to any website, like for example, I'll give you guys a good example of what's not secure. So if you go to like jonzlotnik.info, which is my website currently, I'm updating it. You see it says not secure. Why is it not secure? Because there's no certificate. There's nothing saying that there's no cryptographic public key that you can verify. Okay. So, but if you go, for example, to google.com or .ca, then you see a little lock there, right? That's what they showed. Oh wait, can you see my? Can you guys see my screen with google.ca? Okay, nice. Yeah. So this little lock here shows that it's secure, and what Google Chrome is doing is it has a list of trusted authorities that issue certificates to different websites. So if you look at the certificate, again, you just click over here, you go certificate, valid, right? So it's issued to any website under the domain google.ca. It's issued by GTS CA 101. That's just an issuing server, a certificate signing server. And you can see all the data that's included in the certificate. And you can see when it expires. Like for example, this certificate will expire in 2020. Valid to August 18, 2020. At which point they have to renew the certificate. They have to get a new one from their certificate provider. And this will make sure that you can encrypt the data. You can encrypt the data that you're sending to Google, and it makes sure that they're able to send a cryptographic key that you guys want to use to do all the communication after. And you can see that it's using RSA, and SHA-256 is just the hashing algorithm. So it's just a way of making it easier for the computer to figure out. You can now see that there's a certification process. So who are we actually trusting? Are we trusting Google.ca? No, we're trusting this Google Trusted Services Global Sign Root CA, which is part of a list of a bunch of trusted servers that provide certificates. And then what they did was this root CA, which is probably offline, actually signed another certificate, which it gave to another server. And then this server is actually online, and it's giving certificates to all the different websites. Now, if you go to Firefox, because I know you can find it in Firefox, but I don't know where to find it in Chrome. You can actually find the list of trusted certificate authorities. So, for example, certificates here. So if you go here, the certificate manager in Firefox, you can actually see all the different certificate authorities that your browser automatically trusts, because these have been vetted by the community, and everybody knows about these, and there's a public process that started when the whole process of creating these certificate authorities was public, and you can go look up what the process was like when they actually set these up. And because these are trusted globally, like for example, CertiSign is a big one where most people get their certificates. These DigiCert also, these certificate authorities are able to provide certificates for all of the websites on the internet. You saw GoDaddy there too. So there's plenty of different places where you can get certificates, and most browsers come with a predefined list of the authorities that issue them. So I'm just going to head back into here. Yeah. So what does TLS SSL do? When a certificate authority issues a certificate to a website, what's actually happening is the website server is coming up with some random key, which is the private key, and it creates a public key based on that private key. That key pair is then what they're going to use to encrypt and sign data that they're sending to us. But who are they to say that we should trust them, right? That public-private key pair they generated. So what they actually need to do is send a request with their public key to one of these issuing servers, and that server will then be able to sign their public key so that we know we can trust them, right? Because then we can then verify that certificate, which includes the public key. And then we'll know, like, okay, because it was signed by this other server, we can trust this website. So that's what it is. That's what the certificates you see there are. Now, TLS isn't only just that certificate that's provided and the private key on the server side. It's also a way for us to tunnel encrypted traffic between our browsers and the website. So if you don't have that little lock on the top left of your screen, on the top left of the URL bar, then it means that the data isn't being protected, right? So the way they encrypt, because remember I said the public key cryptography is actually really slow if you're using large keys. So right now most traffic is 2048 size, but soon it's all going to be 4096 because of our fear of quantum computers. But the rest of the traffic actually is encrypted by AES, which is like we said before, is a symmetric key cipher, right? And it's a block cipher, so it's not as quick as a stream cipher, but it's just as good because we're sending packets of information. We're not streaming stuff like on a phone call. So now the question is, how do you use this symmetric key cryptography when everything starts with a public and private key, right? So these public and private keys actually allow them actually allow us to agree on an encryption key that's used for AES, just like what's it called? Just like in the Diffie-Hellman key exchange, because instead of using a complicated process of like creating your own things and agreeing on a key with this mumbo jumbo or whatever in Diffie-Hellman, what we're able to do is actually just say, okay, listen, we want to make sure that that server has a key that only they can that I know only they can read for them to encrypt data quickly with, right? So what you do is you go find their public certificate. When I say public certificate, it's the same as their public key. You say, I'm going to go find their public certificate, and I'm going to encrypt a key that I want to encrypt all the rest of our data with, and I'm going to send it to them, and I know only they'll be able to decrypt that key. So once that initial transaction happens, the rest can be just decrypted with a symmetric key, and this is what creates the idea of sessions. So I know you guys have probably heard heard of the concept of maybe session keys, or like web sessions, or like when, for example, when I don't know, when you go to a website and it automatically logs you out and it says, oh, your session has ended. That's because they don't want to be using the same symmetric key for a very long time, because if that symmetric key is somehow found out, or it's leaked somewhere, or your browser loses it or something, they want to make sure that they won't be still using that key to encrypt all your sensitive data with. So that's why sometimes you'll be logged out intermittently, or the session needs to refresh, or you need to start a new session. That's what the session is all about. Okay, so just whenever you hear that word, you'll understand what's happening. It just means that you need a public and private key to initiate the session, and then once you have your encryption key for the symmetric encryption, you can continue on using that quickly. So the next sort of challenge is authentication. So let me get my pointer again. Is it here? My pointer is here. So this is slightly harder to find. What I want you to look for is wait, did I miss something in the slide before? Sorry. Oh, sorry. It keeps moving slides for some reason. Okay. The next challenge is authentication. So passwords are actually the worst. We all understand that passwords are hard to remember and they're easy to guess. That's why we all have password managers. If you don't have one, you should use one. And when you can avoid passwords, you should. Humans create easy to guess passwords because they're hard to remember, and you need to use a different one for every service if you actually want all your services to be secure. Because if one service is compromised and they're storing your password insecurely, then it's possible that that service you rely on has leaked your password to all your services. Then you need to go and change everything, right? So you want to sort of compartmentalize your services as much as possible. Passwords are bad. I hate them. The company where I work at, Genetech, hates them. We're actually moving to a completely passwordless environment where we won't be using passwords at all. We're using something called YubiKeys, which are hardware tokens. You guys can look a bit more for these things online, and I'll give you 3 minutes to look for these concepts out in the wild. I encourage you to type them into Google and see what they are. And then once you see what they are, maybe try to find them on some of your favorite websites or web apps. I am going to also go look for some images, and I'm going to post them in the stream with you guys. So you guys can start now, and I'll give you 2.5, 3 minutes. Nice, good. So what Dogedude posted was a Google Authenticator. It's an app. It's used for time-based one-time passwords. It allows web services to to make sure that even if somebody figured out your password, it means they also have to have your phone, your physical phone, which has another cryptographic key inside it. And if they can't type in a password, a 6-digit token with these 6 letters, 6 numbers, then they won't be able to log you in, because they'll know that your password is probably compromised, and they'll send you an email and whatnot. Good, that's a security token or a hardware token. That's a good question. Yeah, if you lose the hardware token, then that's an issue. If you're only using the hardware token as a second authentication mechanism, usually you'll set up a few. So you might set up a few tokens. So you might get 2 tokens, keep one in your desk locked up, or is one in a safe locked up, and then you might keep the other one on your keychain or whatever. And the idea is that usually these security tokens also have a PIN, so that it's not only the security token, but the idea is you can use the security token for every website. You don't need to think of a password for each one, because the security token keeps the password secure inside the token. You're not giving it to the website. As long as the website isn't responsible for keeping your password safe, then you can be rest assured that you'll be secure. You want to make sure that your key is in your hands, as opposed to in the website's hands. And if you can't do that with the security token or the Google Authenticator app or some other authenticator app, then the next best thing is to make sure that the authentication is being done by some reliable party. And so if that reliable party is Google or GitHub or LinkedIn, then you can be pretty sure that they're doing a good job of their security, and your passwords are safe. But even then, you should still have different passwords for each service. This is what I'm just going to post a picture of the 2-step verification with the one-time password. With for example, you could connect your Google Authenticator app to this website, Wealthsimple, and you might want to put in your key here to make sure that that you're using the second factor authentication. So that's 2FA. All right, 3 minutes is up. Let's go through sort of what we have here. So OpenID Connect is actually you've probably seen it almost everywhere. OpenID Connect is what is when you go to a website and it says, oh, do you want to connect with Google, or do you want to log in with Facebook, or do you want to log in with LinkedIn, or do you want to log in with GitHub? It's the idea of delegating the authentication process to a trusted third party. That's what OpenID Connect is. It's built on the OAuth 2 framework, which is an authentication framework. You don't need to know exactly how it works, but I have some resources for you to learn about it at the end. The idea is that OpenID Connect allows you to make sure that you as a developer don't need to implement the cryptographic algorithms yourself. You don't want to have to do that, because you're going to make a mistake, and if you do, it's your fault. So you almost never want to implement cryptography yourself. Even if you follow a textbook on cryptography, you actually can't use the textbook crypto algorithms, because if you implement, like for example, the RSA cipher directly from the textbook, it's actually not good enough in real world scenarios. There's a whole bunch of edge cases that aren't covered in the textbook. So that's sort of why it's very hard to implement. we saw time-based OTP. That's where you have an app on your phone usually that has a timer, and it changes the code based on time. So that's different code every few seconds. Again, I'll have resources for how that works at the end. And the idea is that the service you want to log into asks you for your username and password or whatever, and then you also need to type in this one-time password. So the other things you can use are hardware tokens. Hardware tokens, for example, like the Titan you see there, are also YubiKeys. They look very similar. Are tokens which implement a bunch of public key cryptography algorithms in the hardware, so that your keys are actually stored securely in there, and you don't need to worry about your passwords or private keys being stored on some server somewhere. It's actually in your hands. And I think that's, well, right now it's the best option for security. And I would highly suggest going out to get one. I think they're sort of expensive nowadays. I mean, my company provides them for me because I do a ton of testing with them. But you just need one or two to secure almost all of your accounts, because you can secure your Google, your GitHub, your Microsoft accounts with them, and a bunch of other ones. And if you do secure those, at least those main sort of identity providers with YubiKey, you can then log into other services with those main identity providers using OpenID Connect. So I'm just going to show you guys what it might look like when you're logging in or setting up a service with these what you call it, hardware tokens. So can I minimize this? There we go. So for example, if I go to mysignins.microsoft.com, see, so my company email actually is also protected by two-factor authentication. If I hit sign in another way, I can choose to approve a request on my phone using the Authenticator app, or I can do the same thing, but with instead of approving a request, it'll be entering a number. So I actually want to use another account. I want to use my personal account. I'll say j.zlotnik@live.ca. And I'll say next. Oh, that's different, right? Different account. We'll go to over to office. Yeah, no, okay, sorry. It's because the last time I logged in was with my corporate account, so I'm just gonna open incognito so that it forgets about it for a second. There we go. So now, for example, if I type in that, and then I log in with my password. Okay, maybe this is only for, my bad. Yeah, my sign-in is only for, I'll go to outlook.com. So that's actually only for corporate accounts. So if I go to my profile, or maybe my account, you can actually go here. See, go passwordless with Microsoft Authenticator. If you go there, you can add the second factor with your phone. So you can get the app and it'll work with your phone. But there should be a way to add a security token to your personal account. If it's not the case, then it might only be for corporate accounts. But I know for sure you can do it with your Google account. Let me try this. Google FIDO token. So, for example, here, if you want to use a security token as a second factor for authentication, you go to enroll your security token, and you log in with your account. And then you choose your security token, you plug it in, and it does it all for you. And that way, when you log in, it'll prompt you, do you want to use your security token? And with Microsoft at least, you could actually just eliminate the need for a password completely, and you can use the security token instead, which is super nice. Okay, let's move back to the here. Okay, cool. So let's move on to authorization. This is slightly harder. So you guys can try this, role-based access and OAuth 2.0 protected APIs. If you guys don't know what an API is, it's basically a server that you can send requests to from your app, and it'll do things for you that you wouldn't necessarily want to implement yourself. So, like for example, I don't know if there might be some API that generates random jokes. You might want to access those jokes without having to create them yourself. So they'll expose an API. But more sensitive APIs, like for example, the GitHub API, so you can automate certain things on GitHub with your own code, is protected by OAuth 2. And OAuth 2 is something that only allows you to access certain resources for a user that authenticates with it. So if you guys want to spend 5 minutes sort of searching the web for this, I'll give you guys 5 minutes. I will post some links and screenshots in the chat also as you're doing that. So 5 minutes are on the clock. So those are two major APIs that use OAuth to secure them. And don't worry if a lot of this doesn't make sense, especially this last part in authorization, because it's really more advanced, and I'll explain to you sort of what you're actually looking for when you're developing apps in a few minutes. And so these, I just want to make sure that you hear these words and you sort of understand sort of where they fit in to everything, so that at least if you come across it when you're writing code in the future, you won't be totally lost. And then I'll post some more things for role-based access control. So like, for example, if we go to So what I just posted is basically explaining role-based access control in seem like school computers. Yes, very good. Thank you. Yeah. Very good. Role-based access control is where, for example, if you have a list of users, here, this is me in this Active Directory. Active Directory is just a directory of all users. Yes, Discord with roles is also a very good example. So the idea is that users can each have roles. So for example, I am a member. I don't see any actual roles here though, unfortunately. Default directory. Here, roles and administrators here. So for example, these are all the different roles a user can have in the Azure cloud. And each of them have different permissions. So yeah. Sort of roles. Sort of, yeah. So the idea is that whenever somebody is attributed a role in a role-based access system, that role usually comes with a certain set of permissions of things you can do within an environment. And the idea is that public keys are what verify a user's identity. And the idea is that you can create tokens with the user's identity that include roles. And when you create these tokens which have the roles of the user, the person who receives the token to see, or the server that receives the token to see what this user is all about, what kind of things he should be allowed to do, he can check the validity of the token because the token was actually signed by a server he trusts. So, for example, with the concept of OpenID Connect, OpenID Connect. Let me see if I can find a nice. Oh, actually, well, I just did it a few seconds ago with where is it? Now it's a sort of a weird example because I'm signing in to something that is already like the same company, but it's a different service, so it's still a good idea of what happens. So, for example, when you go to log in to Azure or some other Microsoft thing, you might say use another account, and then on the bottom here it says sign in with GitHub, right? So that means that if you have a GitHub account, you could sign in with your GitHub credentials, and then Microsoft Azure will say, okay, hey GitHub, can you figure out who this guy is for me, right? And so what GitHub will do is what Azure will do is it'll redirect the user to a GitHub page. So when I click this, see, all of a sudden I'm on github.com. I'm not on Azure anymore, right? I'm not on Microsoft portal.azure or whatever. I'm on GitHub now. So if you're sent to GitHub, it means you're really logging in to GitHub, right? And you can see it's secure, and the certificate is actually issued to github.com and not Azure, right? But if I go back, you see now I'm on login.microsoftonline.com. This is actually a Microsoft site, right? And you can see that it's issued to microsoftonline.com, issued by a Microsoft CA, and we can see if we go all the way back up the chain, it's actually DigiCert that issued the certificate to Microsoft. And so DigiCert is a certificate provider somewhere in the States, right? In Baltimore, actually. So the idea is that Microsoft will be like, okay, you want to use GitHub to log in? That's fine. We just need to make sure that when you log into GitHub, GitHub gives us something that proves you are who you say you are, right? So what will happen is I go to sign in with GitHub. I'll put in my username and password, right? I sign in. When I sign in, what's happening is it's bringing me back to Azure.com, which is a Microsoft site. We can see if we look at the certificate, it's issued by Microsoft to this specific website, this domain. So what happens right there was if I go back, see that whole process of like a whole bunch of different addresses being shot through my browser. What was happening is when Microsoft sent a request to GitHub, GitHub said, okay, we'll authenticate this person. Just make sure you tell us where to send the user back to once we've authenticated him, and also tell us what you want from us, right? So Microsoft will be like, okay, GitHub, listen, Once you authenticate this user, make sure to send him to portal.azure.com and also send us a token that you've signed with your private key that we can decrypt or verify with your public key that includes all the information about the user, including which roles he has in GitHub, his email address, his birthday, whatever, right? So Microsoft wants to know that Microsoft wants to know that GitHub really knows who this person is, and that token will prove it. Will prove that he knows that that GitHub knows who the person logging in is. So now, once I'm here, now I can just act as if I'm on Microsoft's website, and Microsoft will just keep that token in case it ever wants to figure things out again, and then it'll get rid of it once the session is done. So if I actually look at what storage is being held by this website, if I look at my session storage, where is it? Local storage here, session storage. You can actually see this is the session ID, but there should be a JSON web token somewhere here. And if it's not here, then it'll be, I might not be able to see it here because it's too much, it's storing too much stuff. Portal query, okay, it's not it. Yeah, it's gonna be somewhere. It's gonna be somewhere in here, but we can't see it because they're storing way too many things in the storage right now. But the idea is that the browser is now has a session key with Microsoft, and Microsoft has a JSON web token that it's using to make sure they know who I am. So that's what the OAuth 2 protects, and it's also how the OpenID Connect works. I don't remember exactly how we got to this topic, but it doesn't matter. It was a good discussion. Okay, so role-based access control again is good. It's when you assign roles to certain people. Oh yeah, that's what it was. Roles usually come in JSON Web Tokens, and these tokens are what prove the person's identity because it's signed by the token issuer. So for example, when GitHub gives Microsoft a token to show that he knows that GitHub knows who this person is, in that token it'll give a whole bunch of roles in case you want to know what this person is able to do. So now let's actually look, as a developer, what do we do with crypto? You know, like in the everyday app that we build, whenever we build an app, what are we going to be doing? How do we use all these technologies I just showed you, right? I'm going to open up, where is it? It's a thingy, where'd it go? It's not it. Okay, yeah. So how do we use this? The answer is we try to do as little as possible, right? We should never be implementing anything, as we saw in the previous slides, ourselves, because we're not very good at implementing crypto. We're just one person. We're a few people, maybe a couple dozen people trying to implement this app, right? And crypto is so complicated, and the smallest mistake can leak billions of passwords that if we do it ourselves, we're going to get it wrong. So we may as well leave it to the people who know how to do it, and we may as well leave it to Google, who has entire teams, thousands of developers working on just securing people's apps. And so as long as we delegate that responsibility to a big company, we don't need to worry about it. So whenever you can find a library for your JavaScript app or a library for Python, use that library as long as it's made by somebody legitimate, instead of trying to implement it yourself, because you know that they've done it probably better than you will. So again, if you shouldn't be trying to implement things you see in textbooks, because even textbook cryptography is just that, textbook cryptography. You'll see it in the classroom, but you won't see it in real life. It's really thousands and thousands of developers that work on implementing algorithms and making sure that they're vetted by entire communities. So all of the major implementations of cryptographic algorithms, you'll find on GitHub. You can find them. You can find the open source implementation of all these algorithms, because the algorithm should not be secret, right? Everybody should see how it works, should be able to agree on how things are being kept secret. And then the key is what you use to keep things private, right? So when you input a key into the algorithm, it'll be able to encrypt something with that key, or sign something, or verify something. And those keys are really what need to be kept secret, not the algorithm. So don't try to implement things yourselves. 99.9% of software developers are merely consumers of cryptography and don't try to implement it. Again, even me at my work, I mostly consume cryptography. I don't try to implement anything myself unless it's really necessary and there's something like really weird that we're trying to do that doesn't really fit with anything that's out there already. Then maybe I'll work with some really, really, really good cryptographers to make sure that we know what's going on. And we'll base it on already established projects that have really good examples of what's going on within the algorithms. So I may work a bit closer to the implemented standards when I'm building solutions that are for very specific problems. But my first goal is always to use as little code as possible. I'll write as little code as I can get away with to make sure that I'm not implementing too much myself. Do you guys have any questions about anything I said since the beginning of the talk before we start writing some code or start trying to authenticate some people? Any questions at all? Feel free to unmute yourself, type things in the chat. Any questions at all before we start writing some code? It's a very vague question. It's as secure as the algorithm is, and as secret as the key is. So depending on the algorithm, like for example, the RSA algorithm, the RSA public key encryption algorithm is very secure if you use a key longer than, for example, 2048 bits. If you use a key shorter than that, then all of a sudden it's possible for people to decrypt the data. Encrypted data is really only as secure as the algorithm that encrypted it, and as secret as the key that is used by the algorithm is. So so the second the key that's being used to encrypt the data is leaked, then the data is no longer secure. And if you're using an old algorithm, like DES, for example, then it means that the algorithm that you're using might have some loopholes. There might be something that we didn't foresee being possible was implemented, and somebody was able to break the cipher. So there are plenty of old ciphers. No, you should not be concerned if your data is encrypted. The weird thing, though, is if you look at certain video conferencing systems, like for example, Zoom has had a lot of security issues, but some chatting systems like Signal and video conferencing systems like I don't know any off the top of my head, but some offer end-to-end encryption. That means that there's a key generated on your phone or your computer, and that same key is also on the person you're talking to's computer. And there's an agreement upon the key, either based on some key exchange protocol or public key cryptography, like we were explaining before. And that means that the data is encrypted from the second it leaves your phone to the second that it lands in the other person's phone. Encrypted message mode only. Okay, yeah, I'm not sure. I actually don't know how it works in Messenger exactly, but I haven't checked it out. But most video conferencing software, like Google Meet and Zoom and Microsoft Teams and whatever, it actually decrypts the data at the Microsoft or Google servers, and then re-encrypts it to be sent to the person you're talking to. So that decryption and re-encryption allows them to provide you with extra services like blurring of certain things, or I don't know, automatic analyzing of the quality of the video to make sure that a decent amount is being sent to a reasonable amount of data is being sent, and not too much, not too little. There's all these different things that they're able to do with the data to help improve your experience. But it means they have to decrypt the data at their servers and then re-encrypt it before it's sent to your friend, which is sometimes not what you want. But you can be pretty sure that most of those services are pretty secure, minus Zoom, I guess, because Zoom has had a lot of problems. They're a great video conferencing software, so if you're not doing anything malicious or sensitive, or you're not talking about stuff for your business, or you're not talking about stuff with the government, then Zoom is fine. If you're just talking like whatever, then Zoom is fine. Nobody's gonna go and try to figure out what you're saying on Zoom. But if you're doing something that needs high security, I wouldn't recommend something like that. I would more recommend something like Signal or WhatsApp that has end-to-end encryption. WhatsApp, there have been a few cases of controversy in terms of what they actually mean by end-to-end encryption, but Signal is a great messaging platform that is definitely end-to-end encrypted. So without further ado, let's get into some code. This is what an app might look like. You'll have an end user, you'll have some system administrator, and you'll have a trusted third party like LinkedIn, Facebook, Google, GitHub, whatever. And then you might have a joke sharing app, for example, that you write. And that joke sharing app needs to communicate with Firebase to authenticate people, and it needs to retrieve data from some joke API. And then this is some other software that I might talk about later if we have time, but it looks like we probably won't have time for that. So if we sort of zoom in to the actual application that we write, we might have like a joke portal where the user actually logs in to find and share jokes. We might have a support portal where the joke support administrator might log in to figure out like, I don't know, to read joke sharing logs to make sure everything is going smoothly. And the user might want to know what happened to one of his jokes if it wasn't received by his friend. So they can contact joke support, and joke support can then check their support portal to see what happened. Now, obviously, each of these users need different access constraints, right? You don't want the joke support person seeing everybody's jokes unless the end user specifically shares it with the joke support person. And so role-based access will come into play here. And so will and so other access control mechanisms. Now, we're obviously not going to implement all of this because we can't in the time we have, but we're going to look specifically at this interaction here, the end user and the joke portal, right? And how the joke portal is sent from the server to the user. So I'm just going to quit this for a second, and we're going to look at a super simple solution, which is made possible by Firebase, which is Google's solution for easy sort of authentication and data persistence. So I'm just going to see if I missed anything that I wanted to tell you first before we dive into that. No, I think we're good. Okay, so let's dive right into that then. So I'm going to show you what it looks like when you set up a Firebase thing, and then I'll let you all connect to that Firebase thing, Firebase account when we work on it. So this is, I'm going to log in with this, with my dev account. I'm going to go to Firebase console. Okay, I'm just going to log in with my dev account again. Okay, so when you log into the Firebase console, you'll be able to create a project. And that project might be called Crypto Workshop for Curious. Click continue. I'll just turn this off because we don't really need it for this project. It's just so you could monitor your app while it's running. So I'm going to create the project. And in the meantime, I encourage you to, let me just find the links that I had. Oh, I just had a few more slides, but they're not really important. I'll just show them to you real quick while this is loading. Here, so it was just, what do you want to try? We're going to do OpenID Connect, and then if we have time for one more, we can ask you. I'll ask you if you want to try something else. But we're going to try doing this with Firebase. It should literally take a half hour, or less, maybe even 20 minutes, because it's that simple with Firebase. The Okta blog did a really nice job of explaining OpenID Connect, so I'll walk you through it after you try. After you try implementing it, or actually I'll walk you through it while you start looking into implementing it. And these are the two what's it called? These are the two links that'll sort of get you started with how to use it in Angular. So you don't need to use Angular if you don't want to. You can use just regular JavaScript. But I think that they made it really, really easy to do it with Angular. And I'm sort of assuming you guys already know how to do a bit of web dev because there were already workshops on that. So we're just gonna continue with the assumption that you know how to write some JavaScript and that you could follow a few tutorials. I don't know why it didn't like that. I'll just paste this into my, there we go. So this is the library that you guys can use for your Angular app. And the explanation of how to use most of the things. Sorry, the explanation of how to sign in with Twitter or GitHub or whatever is here. So I'm just going to paste that over here. And you guys can use those links to try it out. So I'm just going to move this to the right, and we're going to have the Firebase console on the left here. It's the wrong account. I don't know why I keep switching back. Sorry if my voice is getting a bit dry. It's just because I haven't had much of the tea that I. Yeah. You should start oh no, you don't have to start a Firebase project. I'm going to let you connect to my Firebase project, but if you want to use your own, you totally can. So I'm just going to show you over here. Oh, continue. I see. Okay. So here, if you go to getting started, you see you got to connect your app to Firebase, so you can install the Firebase SDK. But you don't really need to because, you don't really need to because I'm going to provide you with credentials to use it, and you can use the what's it called? This Angular library to do the connection pretty quickly. So I'm going to show you what it looks like to set up authentication with your app. So in the Firebase console, you just go to authentication and you say sign-in method, and you just choose all the sign-in methods you want to use. So they've been really nice, and they've implemented all of this OpenID Connect logic for you. And so you can sign in with Google, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, like all these major identity providers. And all that's happening is your app is saying, okay, Firebase, I want to authenticate with you, and this user knows how to connect, has an identity over there on GitHub, and I want you to check GitHub to see if that's true. So your app is going to say, okay, well, I'll send you to GitHub, and you can log in there, and we'll just make sure that GitHub sends back that signed token with the GitHub signature to Firebase, and then Firebase will look at it and be like, oh, okay, yep, he's good, and then it'll send an access code to your web app, and your web app will keep that access code, and they'll be able to continue working with Firebase using that access code, and it'll include all the information about the user that was entered when he signed up, right? So I'm going to enable a whole bunch of them. Sign as on configured. Oh, when you can, it's fine. Okay. So if, for example, we want to use the Google sign-in, we can add a support email. Web SDK configuration. So this is the web client ID and the web client secret that you'll use in your actual what's it called? In your actual app. But I'm going to send you a JSON that you can just include in your app. I'm going to save this. And while I'm doing this, you can start looking at this web page, the Angular Fire library, and you can head over to the getting started with Firebase authentication. And this will show you sort of the basic how to log in as a user with Firebase. And if you don't like this one specifically, because it's Angular, you can just do the regular, for example, Facebook login with regular JavaScript. So you can handle the sign. So I recommend handling the sign-in flow with the Firebase SDK, because Firebase will handle sending them to Facebook and whatnot, and you won't need to do that. So you see, it's basically the same syntax as the Angular Fire library. So you can start looking through this and seeing how it works. In the meantime, I'm going to enable a whole bunch of these endpoints for you guys, and then you can try mine, or you can try the other one. So for things like Facebook and GitHub and Twitter, you actually need to have an app ID and app secret that sort of proves that it's your app that's logging in this user. So I'm just going to enter a few of these. So Facebook for developers, for example. I'm just going to log in. There we go. So now we have an app, and we have an app ID, and I can paste this into here, and that way Firebase will know that we'll be able to say, okay, hey, listen, this is the Curious app trying to log into, trying to authenticate this user with Facebook. Now I want to get the app secret. Here, set up. Okay, I don't know if I want to go through this whole thing with Facebook, because then it needs to vet my app. Okay, so we won't do it with Facebook right now, but we can all do it with Google. Okay. So I'm actually going to also start here with a project. And we can create a new Angular app. Oh, whoops. So I'm just creating a new Angular app. And I'll leave this web client ID and web client secret up for you guys. And I'll also show you how to install the Firebase SDK in case you want to use that. Sorry, the Firebase tools. Yeah, so you can actually just install it with Node. So it's already under version control, skipping. Cool. All right, good. So now I have my Curious crypto app here, and if I go into there, I cd into the Curious crypto app, I have all my files, and I can say ng serve tac open. And if you guys have any questions, make sure to put them in the messaging. So it's just compiling everything. I didn't do npm install, so I might fail, but I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. So here, see, so all of a sudden I have the Angular homepage, and this should have worked before you started the workshop. It's just the starting website for Angular, and you can build your app on top of this. So cancel. So now I'll also just install the Firebase. Where is it? The Firebase command line utility. So I'll do npm install tac-g for global, and because I want it to be installed on my whole machine, not just this thing. Yeah, you could install the Firebase CLI if you want to, because it'll give you an idea of how it works. So install a Firebase. So while that's installing, I'm going to start writing the code. And I'll just look in the source, the app. So the main component is here. So I'm just going to get rid of all this stuff so that I can just write it myself. Good. And while that's running, I'm literally just going to write in here. I'm just going to have a div, or yeah, just have a div. And I'll have h1. And we'll say curious crypto app. Good. And then I can put, under that, I'll just make a, I think we already have a, yeah, make a button, but I'll show you guys. Okay, good. So Firebase is installed. Where's the, okay, Firebase CLI. Good. I guess they updated it. Weird. Okay. Okay. So now once that's done, I just want to get the JSON that you can shove into your project, so you can use my Firebase thing. Here, so I'll get started with this. I'll just copy paste this into the TypeScript component here. Good. We have the app root. Template is already there, so I actually don't need my template. I'll just leave it there for now. And then Angular Fire auth is there. Auth Firebase auth is fine. Import component. Cool. Like that. Okay. And we'll just npm install Firebase Angular Fire, so that the actual app here will have, or is it ng? Let me go back to Angular Fire. Where is it? Angular Fire. You go to developer guide. Files. Here, sorry, ng add Angular Fire. That's how you. It's Angular. Oops. So then that'll install Angular Fire to your app, so that your node modules will include Angular Fire, and these things will be seen by Visual Studio Code, and you won't have the red line anymore. And then you should be able to run the app. Go to the quick start guide for Angular Fire. So if you haven't installed Angular CLI because you need a project, I'll post this link too. A quick start. And then you add the Angular Fire to your Angular project. Add Firebase configs to your environment variables. Yeah, here we go. So I'm going to give you guys this. I forgot about this. This is what we need. Set up Angular Fire. Open source up. Inject Firebase. Yeah. So that'll be done automatically, I'm pretty sure. Once we add it to the Firebase project. please select a project. This is for Angular Fire. So we'll call it the Crypto Workshop for Curious. Okay, cool. Okay, so then once you've installed the Firebase stuff, then you can check to make sure that it's there in your app module. For some reason, it didn't get added automatically, so we'll just do that real quick. Like that, and we'll say this module, ng module app, good. Environment. Add this, and we also need the Angular Fire module. That, and so we'll include the. I could probably just copy paste this because it seems to be up to date. There we go. Save. Cool beans. Okay, and then this will go into environments. Here. .ts. Like that, we can comment this out. Like that. There we go. See, now that everything's we're good. Okay, and we will now head back to what is that? Set up individual ng modules. Injecting Firestore. Yeah. Find the Firestore collection. That's fine. Okay, we don't care about the Firestore because we're using authentication. So I'm just going to head back to the environment here, and we can add the data we had over here. Oh, right here. Here. So the web client ID is, I'm pretty sure, the same as we don't care about the database URL. We don't care about the project ID. We'll say the whatchamacallit, the storage, but close the auth domain. Says localhost because it's the local host, because you're just going to be running it on your computer yourself. Pretty sure. Good. Okay. And let me check the Angular Fire. I don't think there is an Angular Fire CLI. That's a good question. Yeah, there isn't an Angular Fire CLI. The Angular Fire is a library for Angular that allows you to easily connect to Angular. So the Angular CLI. Oh, okay. Okay, so right. Okay, so the Angular CLI is what allows you to create and modify your Angular project, and the Firestore CLI, and the Firebase CLI is the command line interface that allows you to create a Firebase project or adjust or just settings in Firebase in case you want to upload projects directly from your computer to Firebase and stuff like that. Yeah. Cannot find a module Angular dev kit schematics. Okay. Try running npm install in the directory of your project. So, like for example, if you go to if I'm in my project here, I'm in the Curious crypto app. I just write npm install, and it should try to reinstall all the dependencies of the Angular project. So that should fix that. If that doesn't, then you might need to try creating a new Angular project. I'm not sure, because Angular might be vague sometimes with the error codes. Okay, in the project overview, you should be able to web. So I was pretty sure. Oh, okay. Okay, so if we go register, then we're gonna say we want the crypto. I'm curious. Crypto web app. Set up Firebase for the hosting. That's fine. Register app. Here we go. So here you go, guys. This is the Firebase config. I'll post it in the chat. I'm going to leave this project up for and the app up for whatchamacallit, for a few days. So if you want to try using this data to see if it works, you can. Obviously, I'm going to be monitoring it. So if I see any ridiculous number of requests, I'm going to close it. But you can use this data in case you don't want to set up your own. If you would like to set up your own, it's super easy. You can just do the same thing I did. You just go to console.firebase.google.com and you do that. So I'm just going to continue to console, and so you guys can put that in your thing here in the Firebase config. Like that. Pull this back up. So once that's set up, see what happens when you ng serve this now. Serve tech open, so that it'll automatically open it. Let's see if it builds. Trigger entry point requires missing defense Firebase app. Okay. So this target in the end. Okay. So if we again, see if we missed anything, if we missed any dependencies. And Stack Overflow is always your friend. So if you ever have an error, you can always just paste it into Google, and there's usually an answer on Stack Overflow. So this guy seemed to be having the same error. Had the same problem compared to my package.json with a different project of mine the other day. I just found that the Firebase project package was not there, so I just copied it in. So I just reinstalled the Firebase app just to make sure that it's working. And I'm going to just where'd it go? Just going to try that again, and I'll do npm install one more time just to make sure all the dependencies are there. You can see it actually updated the Fire package, so that may have been it. I apologize for running a slightly bit over time. The error is still there. It's weird. Check my package.json. We started a teensy bit late, but it's okay. Feel free to leave, and you'll have the recording after anyways. Yes, the participation form. Feel free to fill that out. Where is it? Package. Here we go. Package.json. So it says it's missing Angular, the Firebase app from Angular Fire. Live debugging, guys. It's a weird issue. Pretty weird issue. Okay. So while these things are installing, I'm just gonna explain to you guys what the last few things that you might want to look at are after the workshop. There's also some quantum crypto things they might want to look at. Remember, I was talking a lot about quantum computers and how they might affect cryptography in the future. So there is a real danger in quantum computers breaking cryptography in a few years. So when they do come around, and when general purpose quantum computers are created. The ways we can combat it are using quantum safe algorithms, of which I'll have a link in a GitHub after to look at. And then we also need to increase the key sizes of the algorithms we have right now. So for example, AES, which is the symmetric key encryption, which is the main algorithm for symmetric key encryption over here. AES for it's a block cipher. That one is only quantum safe if the key size is big enough. So if you use a small key size, it'll be breakable by quantum computers. And if you go small enough, it's even breakable by modern day computers, to like today's computers. And so I'll have a link to Shor's algorithm, a video on how it works and how it's so powerful with quantum computers. And then another cool project by our government, actually, the Canadian Space Agency, is the KeySat project, and you can read all about that at their website. It's basically how we're able to create and share keys that are created using quantum physics. And this form of key generation and distribution is 100% secure, because it can be proven using physical laws, like the laws of physics, that this key exchange and distribution solution is secure. So that would mean that the laws of physics would have to change, or quantum physics had to have been not understood properly right now before we created this. Now it's actually being the KeySat, like the KeySat project is actually being implemented right now by the CSA, and its main implementation was subcontracted out to Honeywell, I think. And so Honeywell is currently working on it, and I think it was extended to the project, like the actual implementation of the satellite was extended to 2022 because of the coronavirus. But point is that soon we'll actually have quantum key distribution, which is not the same as general purpose quantum computers. This is just using a specific quantum physical law that allows us to create and distribute quantum cryptographic keys. So if somebody says, "Oh, like we're gonna have quantum cryptography soon," is that what they actually mean is just quantum key distribution. It means the creation of keys, meaning just random bits that can be shared across the world using an impenetrable distribution technique. So that's what it is. It's not actual quantum algorithms. We still use the same algorithms like AES and RSA, but the keys that we would use in those algorithms would be generated and distributed using the laws of quantum physics, which I think is pretty cool. Obviously, I was going to have a Q&A at the end, but you guys can always ask me questions through Discord. You can always ask, and I'll always try to answer the question myself. If I can't, I'll make sure to point you towards the resource that has the answer. And that's sort of it for the presentation. And if you want to stick around, I'll continue working through the setup of the authentication with Firebase. I don't know if Stephen has anything he wants to say before I sort of continue just working through this with you guys.
How long are you gonna go for? I can still continue recording for you.
If you want to, you could. But otherwise, we could point them towards. We could just point them towards the links I have. I don't know if you want to have the video be more than 2 hours.
Yeah, so I'm asking how much longer, like 10 minutes?
I see, okay. So, I mean, it might take another 20 minutes. I'm not sure.
I think I'm going to stop it here then.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
All right.
All the links and instructions will be on the GitHub page. Oh, actually, wait, sorry, right before you stop recording, the GitHub page over here, if you go to my GitHub page, github.com, I forgot about this. Where is it here? Crypto workshop. Here you go. So these are all some links of really cool projects and tutorials and playgrounds and challenges about cryptography and where it's being used in the world. And there's some books also. And so if you guys want to learn anything about cryptography and how it's used in the real world, I would highly suggest looking through these links, just taking some time to browse through it. The docs and articles for securing your apps here at the bottom have the the Firebase authentication tutorials, and also some other things that you shouldn't really try on your own, like the nitty-gritty OAuth 2 flow and JWT, so web tokens, like I was explaining before, and two-factor authentication with your web app. So these are some cool things that you could look at if you're curious, and that's it for now.